some economic issues because the day after Moody's became the second ratings agency to strip Victoria of its AAA credit rating, the Andrews government is now refusing to reveal the budget status of billions of dollars worth of infrastructure spending. Let's bring my panel in. From Sydney, economics editor at the Australian newspaper, Adam Creighton, and from Melbourne, columnist with the Herald and Weekly Times, Terry McCrann. Terry, I'm going to straight to you on this one. We're talking about $76 billion here worth of spending that the Andrews government won't come clean on. Now, that's roughly half of Victoria's total debt. You couldn't get away with this federally. How on earth you can have so little transparency in Victoria when you're talking about these sorts of numbers? How does he get away with it?
Well, Peter, we saw through the course of 2020 how the government got away with, the Victorian government got away with not telling us who made the decisions in relations to policies and actions which killed 800 Victorians. So in comparison, hiding the size of government debt, what it's been spent on, and whether there's any accountability in terms of the expenditures is sort of like fades into almost irrelevance in some comparison. But what we see is the modus operandi of the very, very arrogant Andrews government. And I think you trace all this back to the man at the top. The pattern is set very directly by the way Dan Andrews operates. No transparency, no accountability, and then you layer on top of that the sort of gross spending that would make the late John Cain and Joan Kirner sort of blanch with embarrassment, given what we had in the 1980s in Victoria. So we're talking about much more than $76 billion of spending, Peter, because the whole east, the tunnel project, the new railway around Melbourne, that's completely uncosted. It's going to run for three or four decades, and the government has no idea what it's going to be spending and over what sort of time frame.
I tell you, if the opposition was smart in Victoria, they would promise to bring in, something like you have in Canberra in terms of a Senate estimates process, like a truly investigative process on the numbers, on legislation, other decisions. I know they have something like the questioning capacity in the upper house, but it's incredibly poor, and it's certainly not transparent. I think that this is where Victorians, I think, can be prevailed upon to change their vote. I want to go to house prices. You live in the very, very expensive capital city of Sydney. I'm sure it's front of mind for you, but Westpac's out there today predicting house prices, they're going to surge, they say, by 20% between now and 2023. And that'll take a median house in Sydney up above, well, an increase of $200K, but $1.24 million just seems extraordinary. Do you agree with that analysis?
Well, look, it certainly is extraordinary, Peter, but we must remember that just 9 months or so ago, most economists were saying that house prices would fall dramatically throughout 2020, and of course they actually went up. So we have to take it with a grain of salt. But nevertheless, we are seeing in the housing market generally some extraordinary developments at the moment, where in the month of December, which is the most recent month we have, the volume of home loans that we issued was something like $20 billion, and that was 40% higher than the same time last year. So there is an extraordinary pile into the housing market at the moment. And at the same time, of course, that we have population growth at the lowest level in over 100 years. So it's almost like, the laws of supply and demand aren't really working at the moment in the housing market. You've got house prices going up, you've got rents falling at the same time, you've got huge amount of borrowing going into the sector. So one does have to wonder how it's going to all end. But certainly it's also worth pointing out that there's a shift from apartments to private houses. There's been a real collapse in building approvals and interest in apartments, and I can say that actually myself, I'm currently trying to sell my apartment in Woolloomooloo in Sydney and not having much luck. But certainly houses are going very well.